Ramayana Kalpavrksam.
Jai Shri Ram. I am thrilled to be a part of this beautifully crafted event, Ramayana Kalpavrksam. My heart was overjoyed when I sat enjoying with all of you the little children invoking the blessings of Lord Rama. The cultural immersion that events of this kind give to our children and the present and the upcoming generation is what will lay the foundations upon which this great civilization and culture will continue to live on. On behalf of all of you and on behalf of a lot of millions and millions of Sanatani Hindus who cherish and hold dear to us the values, the ideals of this civilization, I thank the team ably led by Ananda Akka for having put together the Ramayana Kalpavrksam. Because putting together events and event organization is something that I do as a everyday exercise. I know how difficult it is to bring together all of these different elements and pull off an organizing an event of this scale. I thank all of you. Many a times what happens is we always end up thanking people on the stage, but it's always the Kala Rasikas like all of you who come and make the event a huge success. I want to thank all of you because without your participation, without your patronage, events of this kind, you used the word cultural economy. This will not sustain without patronage from people like you. Thank you so much for actually coming together and making this event possible. When I was asked to be a part of this event, come and inaugurate this, I was thrilled. Because not only are we devotees of Lord Rama, in my case, I come from Karnataka, the land of his Parama Bhakta Hanumanta. And our saga, our journey, a sojourn with Rama and Ramayana is so intertwined that not only did we play a vital part in the time and age of Hanumanta, but even much recently, the founder of the Vishwa Hindu Parishat, Pejavara Swamiji, he hailed from Karnataka, and it was that vision that led to the construction and the consecration of the Bhavya Ram Mandir in Ayodhya. It was again the land of Karnataka, which again gave the Krishna Shila, out of which the Bhavya Murti of the Ram Mandir was crafted. And even the sculptor hailed from Karnataka, so there is no way on earth I would have missed inaugurating a Ramayana Kalpavrksam event, even in the midst of a budget session. In one of the most, I would say, profound essays written by Ram Manohar Lohia, titled Rama, Krishna and Shiva, Lohia ji mentions how for over multiple generations, centuries, the stories, the legends, the myths, the itihasa of Rama, Krishna and Shiva has captured the minds of millions and millions of Bharatiyas. of how subconsciously it has become a yardstick of how we must live our lives, and how these three entities of Rama, Krishna and Shiva has also united the country culturally, socially and spiritually. And today, when we all have come together to reflect and celebrate the spirit of Rama, the story of Sri Rama, in multi-dimensional facets, through art, through lectures, through scholarship, through speeches, through dance and music, it is only a reminder of how these two great epics, these two itihasas, have been the central backbone of the country's, the civilization's cultural heritage. We have danced, we have sung, we have wept with sorrow, and we have also lifted ourselves up with the stories of Rama and Krishna. Many a times I wonder whether these itihasas have only an academic value, or whether it is just a story, or is there any higher significance in our individual lives when we read through all of them. But I still remember how my grandmother would, with all piety and piousness, do the Sundarakanda Parayana, and how she would get immense strength out of the Parayana to face the trials and tribulations of life. Akka, I was so overjoyed to know that while celebrating Ramayana and making all of us a part of this celebration, you truly embody the spirit of deriving strength from our epics, because I did not know that you are a cancer survivor who literally has danced through cancer. And I was told just a few months ago you even had stents put in your heart, 4 stents put in your heart, and still you have made this evening possible. We don't have to go beyond Ananda Akka's example of the kind of strength one can derive from the stories, the itihasas, the epics that give us. For a political mind like Lohia, the Ramayana can be a very interesting social political project that brought the country together. For an artist, like in the last few 100 years, every region of this country, every language of this country has had multiple, numerous retellings of Ramayana, and people never get bored of these retellings. For a poet, there is poetry in Ramayana. For an administrator, for a statesman, the conversation between Bharata and Rama in the Ayodhya Kanda is a lesson in statescraft. And for a keen student of political science, of statecraft again, the conversation between Rama and Lakshmana at the fag end of Ramayana is again a lesson in how one should govern. The dharma of a king, the duties of a Raja. For somebody who is deeply passionate about fine arts, Valmiki's Ramayana offers at every instance, every verse can be an inspiration for a new painting. For a musician, from Tyagaraja to Muthuswami Dikshitar, to modern bands like Colonial Cousins, the stories, the songs of Ramayana have always been an enduring inspiration. For children, I still remember, at least for most of us in the south of India, the very first introduction to Rama and Krishna happens when we are mere toddlers of 3 years or 4 years old, when irrespective of your gender, every boy and every girl is made to wear the Vesha of a Rama or a Krishna. In every household, we will have a picture of a small baby, 2 years or 3 years old, 4 years old, barely able to talk, barely able to walk, dressed up as Rama and Krishna. And that is where the cultural immersion begins. We may not have heard of the greatest of great kings who conquered great territories. But Swami Vivekananda writes that the average Indian may have been illiterate, but he will tell you in exact detail the conversation that took place between each of these characters that come in the epics. Because this was the mode of our transmission of education and values. And this survives even to this day. This is the inherent strength of this civilization. Can you imagine just the last few days, the miracle that we are witnessing in Kumbh? On the Mauni Amavasya day and the day preceding that, there were close to 10 crore people in just one place. That is the combined population of Karnataka and Kerala put together on one day in one place. No civilization, no country, no culture in the world can even remotely imagine replicating this, because they were not culturally immersed for civilization for centuries through the teachings of Ramayana and Mahabharata. Though there are unfortunate instances like the one that took place, by and large, things are orderly. And it is not just because of the elaborate arrangements that sympathetic governments which share the vision of this culture makes. It is not just because of the elaborate police arrangements that are made. But it is primarily because our people, coming from different parts of the country, the unwashed masses, in the language of the elite, they are culturally so refined that they don't need an external agency to guard and monitor their behavior. That is the upholding of dharma. If someone wants to understand dharma in action, they must visualize the 10 crore people. And most of them, 99% of them, come from the most modest of socio-economic backgrounds. They would have made days of travel together. No VIP protocols helping them. No special arrangements made. They would have spent days together in Ramajapa, Namajapa, or whatever through the day, deriving strength out of that. And at 2:30, 3, at 4 in the morning, they would have patiently waited for their turn to go and take the dip. This cultural immersion, this is done without any external influence. This is what Ramayana and Mahabharata have given to this country. This is the intangible legacy that they have given to this country. Vishakaji was mentioning of how even outside of India, Ramayana in many South Asian countries is considered the national epic. I want to quote to you I want to quote a very interesting line that Will Durant writes about the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, of how Ramayana laid the foundation for philosophy and morality, not just in India, but to the large Orient. He says, India has produced a culture, an art, a philosophy and a literature as noble as any in human history, and has inspired some of the loftiest traditions of moral discipline and social decency. I would want to underline the last two lines. Moral discipline and social decency. The ideas of duty, dharma, and devotion expressed in these texts have left an indelible mark not just on India, but on the world's moral and philosophical traditions. This is what we have come here together to celebrate. And it is this intangible value that we have given to the world that is incumbent on us to propagate and continue for the next generation. When the Parliament was debating the 75 years of our Constitution, I had the opportunity to make a few remarks that day, but unfortunately, before I could conclude, I had one more point to make. My time was exhausted and I couldn't make this point. But imagine how the Hindu civilization, the Hindu people, so patiently and so devoutly and so within the bounds of law fought to make the Ram Mandir possible. It is, in most of these instances, the Hindu-hating, India-hating lobby always tries to preach constitutional morality to the Hindus. But the Hindu has always been that one population, the one people, who inherently has always placed values for dharma and constitutionality as supreme. For 500 years, the Hindu civilization was patient about its rightful duty. What V.S. Naipaul declared as a wounded civilization, this wounded civilization waited 500 years. 75 years after we became politically independent, because we as a nation, we as a civilization, as a community, we had decided that we will rebuild the Ram Mandir, but we will do so within the constitutional limits, the maryada of the constitution. A 100-year+ legal battle, the community was patient. I think this value of dharma and operating within the framework of dharma, whether you are the nondescript devotee at Kumbh or the collective consciousness of a civilization, I think this is what is the subconscious dharma cultural immersion that Ramayana and Mahabharata have given to this civilization. Friends, I have just two requests with all of you. While we gather at these events to remind ourselves of our duty towards our itihasa, towards our gods, towards our stories, towards these values, it is extremely important for us to understand and appreciate the mediums through which these values are transmitted and protect and preserve those mediums. I personally feel that our classical arts, whether it is our dances, our music, whichever tradition it may be, whichever part of the country, these are the first and the most important stepping stone to understand and truly live the values of this civilization. To all the young parents out there, my request is this: please put your children in classes that teach them our classical art forms. This is the surest and the shortest way of making them truly live the Hindu life. And for those who say that these arts are a preserve of a particular community, let me tell you that there is nothing farther than the truth from that. If you go across the country, you will find every region, every caste, every language speaking people who will claim ownership over our traditions and gods in every way. I was so happy to note that you are having a performance from Manipur. In my course of my travels in the Yuva Morcha, when I go to Gujarat, our Karyakartas welcome us with a patka saying, Jai Shri Krishna, welcome Adhyakji, you have come to the land of Shri Krishna. When I go to Manipur, the other fag end of the nation, they say, Adhyakji, welcome, you have come to the land from where Krishna took Rukmini. This is the civilizational connection of the country. For those who say that Rama is a North Indian god, I pity them because they haven't traveled the south of India. You will find more Ram Murtis, you will find more Ram Krishnas, you will find Ram Krishnas, more number of people. Every other person here is named after Rama and Krishna. Just a few 100 kilometers from here is a place called Kolar. I had the opportunity to go there for one of the events. There one of our Karyakartas introduced me to this place and said, this is where Lava and Kusha were born. With such confidence, as if he witnessed the delivery. But that is the faith. Just a few weeks ago, I had an opportunity to go on a 2-day trek near the Natyarambha forest range in Goa. We finished the trek in the evening and the trek leader told, if you guys still have some energy left, just 5 minutes from here is the Pandava caves. So when the Pandavas were traveling, they had actually come here and they had made the caves here and stayed for 3 days or 4 days, whatever. So we went, we saw. So you go anywhere in the country, irrespective of the community, irrespective of the language, irrespective of the region, there is a ownership over these stories, over our kings, over our gods by every community. So my request to all the young parents is to please give this cultural immersion to your children. Please induct them into any of our classical art forms. These Gandharva Vidyas are where the distillation, the essence of the civilizational values is kept. And my request again to all of you is this, that I have seen a pattern. We introduce our children, our kids to all of these classical art forms. And then at just the right time when they are gaining some proficiency in that, it's either 10th standard or the 12th PUC examinations. And then we tell them at home that this is a turning point of your life. We know that And then, you ask anybody who has crossed that turning point 10 years later, they will say there was not much of a turning point. But we will still tell them that this is such a turning point in your life, we will make them leave everything else. We tell them to just stay at home and just read. And someone who would have reached a certain degree of proficiency in that, the whole thing gets cut there. To all of you here, I want to request you to read this essay on Indian education by Sri Aurobindo. Sri Aurobindo writes about how the ancient Indian education system trained the mind, the young mind, in such a multitude of ways, and how the human brain has immeasurable capacity of absorption of various things, multiple languages, multiple disciplines. But how the modern education has in fact limited and dumbed down the human brain. So my request to you is, A, to introduce our kids, our children to Indian art forms, and 2, to not ask them to discontinue it once they reach their 10th standard or board examinations. Our children are extremely blessed. One of the smartest people, ethnicity in the world is Indians, and we will be able to manage our STEM education along with our cultural education. This is something that we can take for granted. And this is going to complement their life. So please do that, is my request. My last and final request to all of you is this. It is extremely important for us to learn and speak our mother tongues. I was thrilled to know that the very name Ramayana Kalpavrksam today comes from a Telugu retelling of the Ramayana. You go to Karnataka, every poet, every Gnanapita awardee, every literature worth his salt, worth the name, everyone has a Ramayana retelling in his name. And I have read Chakravarti Rajagopalachari's Ramayana in English. Perhaps, there were days when I was in high school and I had to prepare for exams, and I would keep Chakravarti Rajagopalachari's book inside of the school book and I would read, much to my mother's chagrin, much to her irritation. But that was how captivating his narration of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata was. I have read the retelling of Ramayana by R.K. Narayan. If you haven't read, you should definitely read. It's a very interesting take. The lectures on Ramayana by Right Honorable Srinivasa Shastri, brought about by the Madras Sanskrit Academy, is another wonderful piece of book on Ramayana. All of these I have read in the English language. Because most of the people like me who are products of English medium education, our first choice would be to read it in English because we're trained, that's the educational immersion we got. But once I read the Ramayana in Kannada, and once I read S.L. Bhairappa's Parva in Kannada, no story connected to me, nothing that I had read in English connected to me as closely and as dearly and as personally as the works in Kannada did. That's the profound effect one's mother tongue has. Today, we Indians are traveling around the world, around the country, and even we are marrying from different cultures and different languages. This should not be seen as a limitation, this should not be seen as a challenge, but this should be seen as an opportunity to transmit to the next generation both the languages and cultures. Because it is in these languages that so much of our intranslatable cultural values are. My request to you is to prioritize mother tongue as the medium of speaking at homes and in our education. The national education policy also stresses on this aspect. This is truly going to keep our young people much culturally rooted. If we do both of these, the stories of Ramayana, the itihasa of Ramayana, and the values of Rama will continue for the next few millennia. When we say in Sanskrita, as long as the Surya Chandra lives, till then this will be immortal. With that prayer, I want to congratulate again all of you, because all of you have turned up in such big numbers today, and you will in the next 3 days, to discuss such fine elements of our culture. I was just thinking about this, Vishakaji, when we heard this subject of that tomorrow there is going to be a discussion on Dharma Sankatas in Ramayana. Friends, just take a minute to imagine and appreciate the refinement of this civilization and its culture. Even to this day, men and women gather like this in thousands of numbers to discuss whether the conduct of Rama in battlefield was right or wrong. Even in battle, this civilization, this culture had such high moral discipline. And a few thousand years later, there is still a large number of people who have come here, who have come here to discuss whether this conduct was right or wrong. This is the refinement of this culture. I only want to leave all of you with this last quote, again from Ram Manohar Lohia's Rama, Krishna and Shiva. I'm sure all of you will understand the import and the message that I'm trying to convey with this quote. The hills of India are still the abodes of our gods, who have also occasionally lived on the plains in human form, and killed or tamed the serpents of the great rivers, and worshipful squirrels have spanned the seas. Let me read this again. The hills of India are still the abodes of her gods, who have also occasionally lived on the plains in human form, and killed or tamed the serpents of the great rivers, and worshipful squirrels have spanned the seas. The transcendental faiths of the desert, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, have destroyed all gods except the one that is beyond and above, and their hills and plains and rivers are denuded of myths. Antiquarians or those educated in the universities alone know now of the gods on the Mount Olympus. Dharma needs protection, and it is us who need to protect it. Jai Shri Ram.
Ra